Monsignor Nolan. Welcome to the Catholic Corner. You know, our great Pope Francis, he's dedicated the Year of Consecrated Life, beginning November 30th, 2014, and ending February 2nd, 2016. So we have a lot of time for consecrated life. Some of you may already be wondering, what is consecrated life? What's the meaning of consecrated life? You know, men and women, religious brothers and sisters, who dedicate their lives in service to God are in consecrated life. In the consecrated life, men and women follow Christ more nearly to give themselves to God. They pursue the perfection of charity in the service of the kingdom, and they proclaim in the church the glory of the world to come. A beautiful, beautiful expression of life in the blessings of our Christ. My guest today is Sister Rose McDermott, a sister of St. Joseph, Chestnut Hill, is a delegate for consecrated life. She knows better than most what it is to live that consecrated life. She has many degrees, a BA in English and history, a master's degree in religious studies, and she's a doctor of canon law. Not bad for a beautiful woman. She also has a strong teaching career. We're going to hear a little bit today about Sister Rose's life as a consecrated religious and how her life experience have changed over the years, the role of religious brothers and sisters in the world today, and how our beautiful Pope calls to celebrate their lives by dedicating a year to consecrated life. Sister Rose, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Monsignor.
So nice to have you. I think we should go back right to the very, very beginning, I guess, to understand and talk a little bit about consecrated life. Different forms, what it means to men, women, anyone who gets called to that beautiful vocation.
All right. Well, first of all, as you well said, Monsignor, this year, 2015, is dedicated to consecrated life. And because in 1965, with the conclusion of the Council, one of the 16 documents, the Decree on the Renewal of Religious Life, was promulgated by our Holy Father, and therefore we're in the 50th anniversary. I would like to state, though, first of all, that people misunderstand because we're all consecrated. We were consecrated at our baptism.
Sure.
And of course, you and I well know that deacons, priests, and bishops are consecrated with holy orders. They're elected to serve the rest of us, the Christian faithful. However, consecrated life really, using it in a generic sense, it means those who are consecrated through the profession of the evangelical counsels: poverty, chastity, and obedience. And that's the understanding in the church of those of us who are not married, who are not dedicated to orders, clerical life, or who do not choose a life of laity in the church by serving other people. So we try to follow Christ a little bit more intimately through a more intense living of our baptismal commitment through the profession. As you well know, Christ here on earth was poor, he was chaste, he was obedient to his Father, and that's what we try to imitate in our lives. You had asked me too about the various forms of consecrated life. We have about 5 forms that are approved canonically in the church. First of all, the one that is most familiar to all people, religious life, where we live common life and profess the counsels. Then we have the life that our own bishop lives, societies of apostolic life that were founded really to address missionary activity in the church. These are men and women who live according to the counsels and who also live the common life. We have the Daughters of Charity that you know, dedicated to social services. And then we have our medical life that was renewed since the Second Vatican Council. These are men and women who live the counsels in a very solitary way of life. We have the consecrated virgins, that we have a couple here in our own Diocese of Trenton who promised virginity and a promise to serve the people in some way, shape, or form. And the one that we should not forget, of course, are the secular institutes. These are men and women who live the councils, but live in the world, and they act as leaven in the world. They can be, of course, priests, or they could be lay people. So there you have the 5 forms as approved in the church.
And they're all really gifts of God in various ways, just as you mentioned at the very beginning. Through our baptism, we're all called, in a sense, to those councils in some way.
Sure, yes.
Certainly, moms and dads, etc.
That's right.
They have their poverties and their way of living it also. But in a very beautiful way, God does. It shows some who set aside other things to allow the gift of the love of Christ in a very beautiful way. I think it's wonderful to know that it's the giving of self, towards others in some way, shape, or form that just allows it to be such a beautiful gift. Tell me about your calling to consecrated life.
Very interesting. As you look at me, I'm a golden girl, right? And my vocation goes back, and I was asked to write a little bit about this in the Monitor, and it will be coming out soon. In my day, I think a lot of young men and women made a decision earlier on than today. For example, I was 17 years old. I was at West Catholic High School in Philadelphia, and I enjoyed all the things any teenager does: dating, parish dances, movies, all the things that distract one from an academic life. And however, when I was a senior, I was very impressed with Francis Thompson's Hound of Heaven in my senior English class. I had a wonderful sister at St. Joseph that was an expert English teacher, and she kind of unraveled that poem for us. Mm-hmm. And I began to realize that I was fleeing the Lord down the nights and down the days, and I began to realize that I would never really be happy unless I really made a try at living religious life. And so being attracted to the sisters and the wonderful teaching that they proffered for us in high school, I determined at that early age of 17 going on 18. Now I have to say that many of my classmates, my friends, some went into the diocesan seminary, some were Jesuits, a couple went into the Oblates of St. Francis de Sales. Young women went into the Immaculate Heart Sisters, a couple went into contemplative life. So at that age, but then again, girls were marrying at 21, 23 years of age and raising families. So it wasn't unusual in those days for many of us to enter religious life.
In fact, many of our friends, would if they did go to college, and that wasn't even the biggest thing in the world either back in our age.
No, that's right.
It was almost a question of saying, gee, do I go get a job and help the family, or do I go to school? But the ones that went to college, it seemed that many of them, as they graduated, they got married almost the same time. I mean, that was, I don't say everybody did it that way, but it certainly was a common thing. Mm-hmm. When you're talking about when you're 17, 18, and you mentioned there were some other fellows and young women went into religious life or made decisions of what they were going to do in life, was it difficult at that time to say yes? In the sense that sometimes I think today when someone says, I'm going to study or go into a certain life, people think, well, gee, you could make a lot of money or you could do this. Yeah. Was it difficult to say yes back then for you, sister?
Well, I think the most difficult thing was leaving my family. We had a very warm, loving family. I had a wonderful father and mother and 2 brothers and a sister. So that was difficult. My friends, I was fortunate. In high school, we had a very fine education. And I had an opportunity, in fact, I was approved with the Federal Bureau of Investigation to be a stenographer. So I had kind of, in those days, I had the oyster. The world was my oyster.
You could have been an undercover agent.
That's true. However, in those days, no. But I did live to have a young girl call me when I taught senior English myself, and she was applying for a special agent. And I said to her, "You made my day." I said, "In my day, I could only be a stenographer.
Yeah.
You're going to be a special." So you see, what goes around comes around, Monsignor. But anyhow, getting back to me, yes, it was difficult because our world was not as large, as difficult. I think it's very difficult for teenagers today. There are a lot of distractions. There are a lot of, I often think they don't have too much time to reflect on life. There's so much with sports, so much with technology, so much today that I don't know that students have sufficient time to reflect the way we did. We had some quiet time.
You know what I feel sometimes, sister, as beautiful as our life is, that I'm thinking back again to our ages of being in high school or whatever. It seems that when we entered some type of life like that, there were many facets of that life, where today some of those facets are done by people who don't have to enter religious life. They can be, counselors, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So some of them fulfill their desire without really, I think, being seen that the way that they can kind of also put that quiet time and have that intimate time of prayer, et cetera.
That's very true, Monsignor, and many times religious would mention that to me. Gee, I could have been a good teacher, a good counselor, I could have been a good social worker, and so on. And that's why I think in those years from, I would say, the late 40s through the early 60s, when we had 100 girls enter our community in 1960, all right? I think that here in the United States, that was highly unusual because actually religious life, if you go back and really study its history, it tends to be fewer vocations and not as many. And the whole idea of religious life is not so much what we do for the church as who we are. The charism or the gift, as I said to you, the church did not invent that. That's a gift of the Holy Spirit given over to the church. Various gifts, a Mother Teresa, Ignatius Loyola, a Saint Dominic, a Saint Francis, do you see? They're gifts that are given to the church to keep us in mind always, as you said, of the eschaton or the final life that we will all be living. So I'm not too sure that religious life and consecrated life has to reflect the way I entered with so many people, as much as it continues to be.
And actually, maybe the Spirit of God was bringing it that way, just for the reasons that you mentioned. That it's maybe a more pure sign in a sense. The Sisters of St. Joseph of Chestnut Hill, I'm smiling because they're so beautiful from back when I was a young person. I mean, that was the Sisters of St. Joseph of Chestnut Hill. And there you are. You're one of them.
Here I am.
How
That's
come?
right. That's right. How did I become? Well, as I mentioned to you, I was impressed with teaching. I always liked, even though, as I said, I was distracted by the same normal things that teenagers were distracted by. But my mother tells me as a little girl, I would come home from school, take my little blackboard, and go out and teach the youngsters on the block what I learned that day in school, how to borrow and carry and so on. So I think I had it in me always that somehow or other, contemplative life was not for me. I had a nun in the Port Clare. I used to visit her in Bordentown from Philadelphia. I loved her dearly and loved the nuns there, but I always felt that the good Lord wanted me to teach, to do that. And so I was attracted, and as I said, the Sisters of St. Joseph, well, all the sisters we had at West Catholic, we had about 7 different religious communities. We were blessed. They were all specialists in their different areas. But I was also privileged to be a musician. I played the violin in high school, so I was in the orchestra, and the Sisters of St. Joseph also were the ones that took care of the music department. So of course we met the sisters after school, and we were on a much more, what would you say, less formal, informal base with them. And I became
So you would
very
get the
fond.
milk and the cookies.
That's right, we had the milk and the cookies. And I became very fond of my first violin teacher. And it was through her, really, that I think God uses people
Oh, absolutely.
to move us in different areas.
We could speak
yes.
about that for hours
That's right.
and hours.
That's right.
What was life like when you first entered? I mean, it's got to
well,
be different than it is today.
Yes, it is very different than today. I think and I have to laugh because I think of Jello, and you're going to laugh when I say Jello. But we were formed kind of into a mold of the Sisters of St. Joseph. And I talked to my Jesuit priest friend. He says the same thing, the mold of the Jesuit. Today, more and more, they tap the potential of the youngster and the gifts of this person. And of course, they're older too, and many of them have gone through college. We were youngsters. It was a continuation of our developmental process for us. But yes, but I never regretted it. When I entered, there was a great emphasis. We had a wonderful director of novices, and she focused very much on prayer and charity. I think she had the wisdom to know that things would be changing, that some of the formalistic rules and regulations we had would be passé. And so she really emphasized prayer life and charity, which I always deeply appreciate, and which I think we did not lose a great many vocations after Vatican II with all the turmoil and the change, and so on. Was it a wise Chinese man said once not to live in an age of change or whatever? But we were fortunate. So I think we had that formation that was very strong, and it carried us through. It carried us through all the changes with Vatican II and so on. Today, I think it's less formal. I think one of the reasons, too, theology has changed that. When I entered, there was a great emphasis on fuga mundi, or a flight from the world. And even those of us who were in apostolic women religious institutes were very much cloistered. We went out with a companion, even to doctor's or dentist's office and so on. And so it was more of a cloistral element. In fact, as a trained canonist now, I realize that the former code said very little about our apostolic life. It was really after Vatican II. And I think Gaudium Spes influenced that we embrace the world with its hopes, its fears, its joys, its sorrows. So there was a going out, and of course that had its effect on apostolic religious life.
It's a great theological understanding, I think, that we've grown with of the incarnation.
That's correct.
Of the divine coming into
That's
the world
correct.
to
Yes.
bring it to the divine love of God the Father.
Mm-hmm.
Today, what does consecrated life have to offer young people today? Because I think that's important for us.
Well, I would hope, and I do pray, that the young people today realize the joy that I had. First of all, that they're open to that voice of God, that as I began to realize I would never be happy, that hopefully, and this is happening to people who are coming to us, they're older, but they do sense that the world cannot offer them, very much what they are offered in this way of life. So we do see it, not as I said, with as many, I entered with 40 young women. We won't see that today. The Sisters of St. Joseph, we have 2 or 3 coming in, but that's all right. We're very careful, and we want to know that they have discerned a vocation, and of course they have to go through the formation process and so on. But I would hope that I keep praying that young women really have the happiness that I have had through my life, because I certainly would go back and do it all over again. I have no regrets at all. After 16 missions, I have no regrets. I have enjoyed every moment of my life.
I think, I might paraphrase this, but I think our good Pope Francis said something about, a Christian is getting fulfilled when they smile a lot and laugh a lot, or however he said it. And I think with the joy that I'm finding is that I think we see that in consecrated life. We see that in other walks of religious life. We see that, I think, in in couples that are living together, getting married and
That's
raising
right.
families. I see it in some of the young people.
That's right.
So somehow I think it's from the Vatican Council, and it's spread out to the circle.
That's
the circle's
true.
there, and there are many ways of allowing that great gift of God's love and joy to be fulfilled. And like you said, people like yourself, people see your joy, see your smile, and it gets contagious.
That's true.
It does get contagious. What would you say to someone, that said, "Gee, sister, I think I might have a call," or how would they recognize that call?
Yes. Well, it's something, as I said, that you experience yourself in the depth of your being. But of course, too, the Church has criteria for consecrated life. And we do know that there are certain criteria. I would talk with the person. First of all, the person is a Catholic. To start with the first. The person has to have certain physical, psychological, spiritual qualities. The person has to have lived a good Christian life, because as I mentioned at the beginning of our interview, Monsignor, religious life is an intensification of baptismal life, so it presupposes somebody has understood what baptism is in his or her life. So that would be the spiritual, psychological. People today go through psychological testing, because don't forget, you have to live common life, and just as in married life, this is probably one of the more difficult. I'm laughing because as a young sister, I thought the vows, but the longer I lived and the more experience I have had, I understand that just as in marriage, where there's a give and take, also in consecrated life, with living a common life, there's a give and take with other people and other human beings. So you have to have, you don't go into religious life because you want something or because you're dependent and so on. You go in because you want to offer your own gifts to contribute, to a specific religious institute and so on. And of course, good health, especially in apostolic life, because I've been on 16 missions, as I said, and it presupposes good health, up and down steps, in and out studies, and so on. So there are demands depending on the life that one would enter.
And not saving too many knickknacks.
That's right, that's right, that's right. You have to travel loosely as you go through life, yes. And,
but you know what I thought, and maybe it's not even true. I'm going back years ago,
Surely.
Like when you said that when you entered you had 40 or something.
Yeah.
So that if you're studying or living, there's lots of personalities that you can identify with.
Exactly, and also,
as things have
Monsignor,
changed,
I think it was easier for us too, because I was in formation myself, and what I mean is I did for 6 years, I was assigned to help our young sisters in the postulancy and the novitiate. These are young gals. And at that time we had 35. And what you begin to realize, and I reflected on their lives, and when I entered, you help one another.
Sure.
You have a bad day,
Sure.
and it's a good day for me, so I'm
Sure.
going to help you, and vice versa. I have a bad day, and then you help me. But I think today, with one or two coming in and so on, and the emphasis on that person, it's much more difficult,
Sure.
because they don't. Now, what we are doing to compensate for that, Sisters of St. Joseph, and that's something else I should explain to you. We were founded in France, Monsignor, in 1650, at a time when there was very little acceptance in the church for active women religious. But this Jesuit, God bless him, Father Jean-Peter Médaille, he said, I want these women out, taking care of the orphans, the widows, any acts of charity they can do. And so we kind of went out incognito in the ordinary dress of the ladies of that day, and we tried to help the people. As we came into the United States, because we were not ordained, we were put under various bishops. So we started in St. Louis. From St. Louis, we went to Philadelphia and various. There are approximately, well, there used to be 13, but now I think we're down to about 10 groups of Sisters of St. Joseph in the United States. What we have done, and we have asked Rome, and we have given permission to have a common novitiate, so that these young women entering our various Sisters of St. Joseph, because we share the same charism, we have the same spirituality,
Terrific.
that they will be in common life from the very beginning, and that they will live to give and take,
they
because
can
we
share
find
with
it.
each other.
That's right. That's right.
Marvelous.
Yeah.
Sister, consecrated life, a gift of the Spirit given to the church, will not be taken back. The church must promote, encourage, and support vocations to consecrated life.
And I think it all begins in the family. We're having that wonderful meeting in Philadelphia come September, am I correct? And I look at my own life and I think, where did I first have the potential? And I think it goes back to my good parents. I saw their sacrifice for one another and their sacrifices for us. And this prompts goodness in youngsters, prompts generosity, prompts goodness and virtue, and so on. And then, of course, that was reiterated in school, grade school. I had the wonderful Immaculate Heart Sisters that I still love dearly, and high school with the sisters. So I do think it goes back to family, and I think we have to tap parents to be cognizant of their youngsters, and that at least this is an option for them, and talk a little bit more about a consecrated life, or a life to the priesthood, as you are, a life of service
And
to
to
the
share
church.
the joy of our lives.
That's
I
right.
think people think that,
that's right.
we pray well, we laugh
Exactly,
well,
yeah,
we work
surely,
well, and
sure.
there is a great joy to
And
the life.
unfortunately today, with the lack of vocations, like my sister, I have a sister who's also a wonderful sister of St. Joseph, but in those days we felt free to go to the convent. The
Sure,
sisters welcomed
sure,
us.
be part of it.
We were part of it. We helped them fill their salt and pepper shakers. We did anything because we liked to be with the sisters.
Sister, we don't have a whole lot.
We
We
don't
could talk
have that.
forever about
That's right.
God's grace to our own lives. This is the year of dedication of Pope Francis. We pray, we bless. In a couple of words, what would you say to everybody?
Please, parents, youngsters, teachers, all you can do is just share a little with what I have shared today about consecrated life, and encourage, because I still think that the Holy Spirit is tapping the hearts of young people.
Sister, God bless you.
to
Thanks
do
so
that
much,
work.
and keep your smile, keep
All
your
right.
heart. The Catholic Corner, pray with us, be with us, open your hearts to see where the Spirit of God will lead you, maybe to consecrated life. Thank you, sister.
Good one, son.
Last summer, my new dad took me on vacation. First, we went deep sea fishing. Wow!
I'm so proud of you, son.
And then we went on Thunder Shark. That was awesome! Let's go again! 3 times. I gotta say, it was pretty cool.
You don't have to be perfect to be a perfect parent. Thousands of kids in foster care will take you just as you are.
Oh, not again.
That's low. That's low. That's low. Look, he's blushing. Seriously.